Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Bomba panel. I'm the moderator, Adrian Loving, and I'm going to be speaking with Amber Robles-Gordon and Isha, excuse me, and Alex about their practice doing Bomba. And welcome, guys. How's it going?
Good.
Doing pretty good.
Thank
Great.
you for having us. Yeah.
Great. I'm glad to have you all here. And, I think this is an interesting discussion that I don't think often is had, especially in the art communities here in Washington, D.C., about this important dance form. So I think we're just going to get right into it. Maybe say a little bit about yourself and how you got into doing it. And then I'll throw some questions your way that you can talk a little bit about your artistic practice, how a little bit about the history and kind of what it means to you to do Bomba. I think that's what we're trying to get at today. Okay. How about we start with you, Alex?
Okay, yeah. I started. I was introduced to Bomba in the early '90s, and I started just hanging around one of the elders of the community. His name was Tito Cepeda, and just I was just building with him. It was around '94, '95, and the first Bomba group that I started actually playing with was his group, and then from there with groups like Yerba Buena, Afro Boricua. I played with many other groups around the island and here in New York as well. And eventually in 2002, I formed my own group, Alma Moyo, and just been playing there with the Plena Nostra 21 and with other groups since.
And what are some of the instruments that you play? What is your primary musical instrument?
Can I interject a question, please?
Oh, sure, sure.
Alex Lasalle, can you please introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Alex Lasalle. I'm from Moca, Puerto Rico, and I've been playing bomba since about 1994. And since then, just with many groups. And like I said, I started Alma Moyo in 2002. And my main thing within the tradition has always been more so I got into it more so just to find out more about my family history and about myself than to actually like even study the music or anything like that. I just really loved it, and the more I did it, the more I wanted to learn, and just one discovery led to the next and to the next, and so I made it a point to study not just the music but also the history behind it, and eventually I just was recognized as like a cultural historian of the tradition.
Great. And can you tell me some of the instruments that you play in your various groups?
Usually the singer, the lead singer. And I play the primo drum, I play the bullador, I play the qua, I play the maraca, I play all the instruments if I have to, wherever they put me, that's where I'll land.
Okay, great. Thank you. Amber, you want to take it from there?
Yes. So my name is Amber Robles-Gordon, and I am interdisciplinary artist. I usually do large-scale installations like textile, sculptural, um, public art, collage. I love to do things large, like huge. Um, and in the last 3 years, I have been investigating my maternal line of heritage, and it's absolutely being an Afro-Latina. My mom was raised in between St. Thomas and Bayamon in Puerto Rico. So um, this project, reclamando mi tiempo, reclamando cuál es lo mío, um, basically reclaiming my time, reclaiming what is mine, is part of my endeavor to make ties with my birthplace. And I started that with work that I presented at American University in 2021, which was called Successions Traversing U.S. Colonialism. And it was two bodies of work. The first one was Place of Breath and Birth, and then Successions, which is a double-sided quilt works. They're huge. And I bring all that back to that exhibit because originally this project, the Bomba, me learning this and being able to I don't know, to take it on as a personal practice was supposed to be part of that AU exhibit. But we couldn't get the funding and COVID happened and so I had to tuck it aside. But in that in that
Various groups.
Usually the singer, the lead singer. And I play the primo drum, I play the buleador, I play the qua, I play the maraca, I play all the instruments if I have to, wherever they put me, that's where I'll land.
Okay, great. Thank you. Amber, you want to take it from there?
Yes. So my name is Amber Robles-Gordon, and I am an interdisciplinary artist. I usually do large-scale installations like textile, sculptural, um, public art, collage. I love to do things large, like huge. And in the last 3 years, I have been investigating my maternal line of heritage, and it's absolutely being an Afro-Latina. My mom was raised in between St. Thomas and Bayamón in Puerto Rico. So this project, reclamando mi tiempo, reclamando cuál es lo mío, basically reclaiming my time, reclaiming what is mine, is part of my endeavor to make ties with my birthplace. And I started that with work that I presented at American University in 2021, which was called Successions Traversing U.S. Colonialism. And it was 2 bodies of work. The first one was Place of Breath and Birth, and then Successions, which is a 7 double-sided quilt works. They're huge. And I bring all that back to that exhibit because originally this project, the Bomba, me learning this and being able to I don't know, to take it on as a personal practice was supposed to be part of that AU exhibit. Originally, learning about Bomba and investigating it, wanting to create a community or wanting to be a part of a Bomba community. That was all supposed to be originally part of the American University exhibit. So um, during that process, I was also working with Cultural DC or knowing of Cultural DC. And I happened to mention it to Christy that we couldn't make it all work. And so later on, Christy came back to me. She said, Amber, why don't we try and make that portion? Why don't we try and make that a project? And I was like, yes, so excited. And so that's how this came about. And I found Alex, I found Isha, and that's why we're here. I'm grateful for this.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. And Isha, tell us a little bit about how you came to be a part of Bomba and about yourself.
Thank you for your question. Thank you for having me. I like to say that Bomba found me. It was meant to happen. I grew up and was born and raised in Puerto Rico. But I moved to Washington, D.C. to do my graduate studies. And I guess at that time, being so naive, I'm so focused into going to grad school, get my classes and get a degree and get it done. But I was not thinking about the cultural and social impact that would have in my life. So it happens that if a friend of mine from the university, from Howard University, where I was attending grad school, she joined a group in DC that was starting to do Bomba with live drumming. They used to do Bomba doing more dance routines, but in that time specifically, they were trying to do live drumming. And they had their first performance, and I just went to see her, to support her as her roommate, not knowing what was gonna happen after that. So I went to the show, they performed. At the end of the show, they called me and they were like, hey, we want people from the audience to participate. And of course, my roommate went to grab me by the arm and she was like, you are going to dance. I had no idea what I was doing. But basically, I then joined that group, Raíces de Borinquen, which was based here in Washington, D.C. And I started as a dancer. I always loved to dance. I took salsa lessons back in Puerto Rico. I remember doing routines with my roommates with great music and all that great stuff. So I always loved to dance. But now this part was giving me part of my identity that I didn't know I was missing, being far from Puerto Rico. So as I was living in DC and I started participating, then I moved to Fredericksburg when I got married. So I couldn't move, I couldn't go to rehearsals, I couldn't participate as actively as I was once I had my kid and stuff. And when I didn't have Bomba for those about 3 years, that's when I realized how important it was for me in my life and what it was really filling a gap that I had in my heart. And that's when I thought about starting a project. At that point, the organization Raíces de Borinquen has winded down. It has dissolved. And I was like, well, I want to do a project, but I want to do it educational. Because if I'm going to call it bombazo or toque de bomba, but people don't know what they have to do, how am I going to get them to participate? That was kind of like the thought process. Then the other thought process that I had behind that was like, I was born and raised in Puerto Rico. I never saw Bomba live until I moved out of Puerto Rico. How many other Boricuas?
Isha, we lost you.
Whoa.
That's okay. Hold on. Let's try to get her back online.
Okay.
Can Amber, can you text her maybe? I'm sure she knows my.
One thing I think is really interesting about Bomba is that, when you start looking at these dance forms that are communicating, Bomba is something that if you're not exposed to it, it can be quite interesting and beautiful to watch. It may read as a festival sort of dance, but in many ways it's communicating political and social messages. And so I wanted to ask you, Amber, what were some of your earliest understandings of the messages that were created, and what messages have you sort of infused into your work or your participation in Bomba?
So I think what drew me in and relating to Bomba is it's almost like a moving passion, moving commitment, moving even interdependence. Like it's a form of the call and respond. And to me, and especially also, because it's based on so much in terms of the drum, the African drum, um, it just moved my spirit. And then when you end up researching about it, like I kind of dived into it, you also see that it is used as protest.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you link it to, Plena, which is the part that's more of like the orating, along with the storytelling, along with the drumming, right? And along with sometimes with the dancing as well. It becomes like a representation of ongoing physical and continuous protest, but also joy. And I think that was one of the things that I just loved the most. And even, as being a person of color, right? A person that's Afro-Latina, that's a part of the Caribbean. And then when I'm here, I'm considered Black, from whatever standpoint, whatever viewpoint of those that I just mentioned. There's always been restrictions around how we use our body, how we use our voice, how we use our collective, ability, our collective power. And even more so because I'm a woman. So when you watch, especially women in the bate, and you see them relate to who they are in such a passionate and physical and spiritual way, and just the release of it. I was like, I want to do that. I must learn to do that. And even more so because, you know, um, that umbrella that is patriarchy as a woman, a Black woman, a Latina woman, you see it wherever I turn. There's some form of it. Somebody putting their restrictions, their ideas, their concerns over top of how myself and other women use our body, use our voice, use our minds, use our power. And here in this bate, you see, I don't know how else to phrase it, but
You see
yeah,
the best of it. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, that's for me.
Okay. Okay. It's a good affirmation of culture and heritage and femininity and all those things sort of wrapped up into one.
And
Um,
protest.
and protest, which is not something that most people get a chance to participate in,
Yeah.
and so this it's great. Alex, I had a question for you regarding the music and the drum as this sort of rhythmic communication device. There's different patterns that the drum produces and messages encoded. That was the way the Africans talked to each other through the drum. That was coded messaging. How do you learn how to play and learn how to play these coded messages and also to play in sync with other drummers and dancers? Like, how long did it take you and how did you become to that?
So let me start again. When I started playing bomba, I didn't start as a drummer.
Mhm.
I started off as a singer.
Mhm.
But I had already come from another tradition that at the time I didn't know, but was very similar. It was an Afro-Cuban tradition that I was raised in, both Santeria and Mayombe, the Palo tradition. And I was already initiated into the Palo tradition when I started learning about bomba. And I had been assisting my mentor, my godfather, my teacher, whose name was Florencio Miguel Garzón, in his drummings. He was the main singer and one of the main, folks responsible for keeping that Afro-Cuban tradition that came from the Congo alive. And so I learned how to sing within these traditions from him. And when one day we finished a ceremonial drumming in the Bronx, and they put away the conga drums, and I see that they start bringing out these big drums that I'd never seen before. And I asked my godfather, "Hey, what's this?" And he says, "I don't know. That's stuff that you guys, the Puerto Ricans, do. I do the Cuban stuff. That's the stuff you guys do." And so I went and I asked the owner of the house, who was Tito Cepeda, one of the members of the Familia Cepeda, one of the most, important families within the bomba tradition. And he said, "We're going to do some bomba." And that's the first time I saw it. I was about 15, 14, 15. And then I understood that that's what I was seeing. And so I started learning the songs first and learning the history. And eventually, about maybe 6 or 7 years later, I said, "Hey, I want to learn how to drum this as well." And so the curiosity of mine is never just to learn, the pattern, but to learn what's behind it. Where did it come from? Who did it first? Where were the roots of what I'm learning? Because nothing just happens in a vacuum, right? Nothing just happens. Something comes from something else. And so that led me down a long, I guess, a trajectory of studying not only the traditional rhythms of bomba, but the regional variances, as well as the sub rhythms, and personal styles. And so so it was not just, okay, let's learn bomba sika. No, it was now, let's learn how they play it in Cataño. Let's learn how they play it in Mayagüez. Let's learn how they play it over here and over there. And what are the differences? Why are there differences? And so that, and the fact that I was raised in these Congo traditions from Central Africa, uh, said, well, this all sounds very familiar. Like it feels very familiar. It feels very Bakongo. So I started studying the roots and the history behind Bomba, and that's where the roots lie. The roots are in the Congo. And so I just started making connections between the words and what does the word bomba mean? It's not Spanish. None of the rhythms of La Bomba are in Spanish. There's not one rhythm in Bomba where that rhythm, the name of that rhythm is in Spanish. It's either in Congo or in French Creole.
Mm.
That's it. Seis corrido doesn't count because the seis corrido is not the name of the rhythm. It's the seises are what we call all bombas. All the rhythms are called seises de bomba. And it's a seis corrido, corrido meaning fast, right? Or running, is because it's just a seis that's been sped up. But what is the name of the seis that they're playing? That goes back to Central Africa. It's bambula. It's the rhythm of the memory of remembering of who you are and reaching back to that ancestral origin and bringing it back. And you know, and so for me, that's what led me to becoming a drummer as well. I grew up in New York City. We left Puerto Rico when I was a child. And I grew up in New York City, and for me, music was punk rock and other stuff that was happening in the 80s and 90s of New York City. And then to discover this was because I needed to discover more about who I was. You know, half black, half white, full Puerto Rican, but those are two different things, you know, ethnicity and race. So I was raised with my mother. You know, I never met my father. My last name, Lasalle, is my mother's last name. I chose not to carry on my father's last name because my mother, who's a Black Puerto Rican woman, raised me by herself. And so I wanted to know more about my roots and my family's roots. And turns out they were pretty amazing. You know, they were pretty amazing. And so Bomba was always a part of it as well.
Wow.
So it's coming back
Yeah.
full circle. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. I love how you talked about the patterns and the origins out of the Congo. Isha, I'd like to continue with hearing a bit more about your entree into Bomba and what you're sort of taking from it at this point in your life.
So, apologies because I'm not home, so the internet has been very tricky with me. So where I left was that, so I started a project in 2014 named Semilla Cultural, which translates to cultural seed. And the main focus of the project has been to make it educational so the community can learn about it. And it has been, you know, a great experience for me. I've learned a lot, not only as a, you know, running like a nonprofit, but also different ways to share the tradition. I think through the past 10 years that we've been running, it's just been a great learning experience. The community has been going strong, and it makes me very proud to meet people like Alex and Amber and run through other amazing experiences through the tradition of Bomba. So I will leave it at that, and so I can keep the conversation going.
Okay. I'd like to dive in a little bit deeper. Have you all collaborated together, or how does it, who starts the collaboration process? Is it, you know, Amber, do you call Isha or Alex and say, I've got this idea, or there's this thing coming up, let's work together? How does the sort of union happen?
So I don't remember how I found out about Alex. I just remember like starting to dig, and after I was determined I have to make this happen. And somebody said, you know, that I should reach out to Alex Lasalle. And so I did that. And he was very gracious, and he kind of, I remember I was describing like how much this path meant to me, and how like when you feel that you have when you see something like in your journey as you're living and you realize, wait a minute, you feel a loss. Because you kind of like what Isha said before, like she didn't know, um, because she didn't encounter Bomba through her life, her childhood in Puerto Rico, when she found Bomba in Howard, or through Howard, she's like, you realize, holy hell, I've been missing something and I was not aware of it. And it almost makes you feel like not, I don't want to say resentment, but you're a little like upset, like, wait a minute, like there could have been more to who I am, more to my understanding of who I am and my family. Um, and I like to mention that sometimes that her experience and mine were very similar. And through Bomba, it's like reaching back, inward and outward to learn more about yourself. Um, so then, Alex had a lot that he was working on. And I had to search for another teacher, and then I found Isha. Um, and I went to one of her classes, and I'm such a crybaby. So I went to her class, and even through the class, like afterwards, I was tearing up, and because I just there was a feeling of this is one of the places I belong, and that just felt so damn good. And she just responded to me. She was like, oh, she just, and I'm tearing up again. But I was so grateful that the way that both of them were welcomed me and kind of like dropped nuggets and then for this particular, I just texted Alex and I said, "Hey, would you, join us in a conversation?" So,
Well, that's great. It sounds like this is more of an inclusive experience than an exclusive experience. And I mean, Isha, you're lucky to have gotten it at Howard. I went to Howard. I never heard anything about Bomba when I was there. And we have a lot of Caribbeans and Africans and South American Blacks, and it seems as though this is yet another tool to connect with the diaspora, no matter where you're from, because there's
yeah.
people who did not grow up in Puerto Rico and maybe do not have this in their heritage, but they can relate to it maybe through capoeira or breakdancing or other African traditional dance forms. And it's another sort of language to learn. So I think it's you all are functioning as like three ambassadors to what Bomba is and what it could potentially become for those people that want to dive into it. Now, Amber, you have a performance coming up. Walk us through what that is going to sort of look like and what your intentions are.
Um, so overall, yeah, let me start with the performance is going to be um I think it's at Songbird Music Hall, and that's in Northeast DC, and it'll be November the 17th from 1:30 to 2:45, and it's part of a Culture DC Presents Torrents, and overall, my goal I don't think but anyway, so I'm looking at Bomba as a theoretical practice. And my goal is to create a body of work that expands on my interpretation of that. In addition, my goal is to create a mini documentary that shows me going through that process. Um, I think one of my overall goals is to show somebody, myself, who's almost at that midpoint in life and still able to reach back and say, because I started all of this work in order to heal my 5-year-old self that gave up, that let go of a part of her heritage in order to not be bullied. And so I wanna be able to help other people do the same because I truly believe the way that this world works, we all have a little bit of hurt at one point in our lives, and most of us, it's several points, but one main hurt that has impacted our choices and behavior, henceforth. Um, so I am looking at this as a spiritual journey. I'm looking at this as a cultural journey. I'm looking at this as a like a uh, manifesting health and celebration journey. So when it comes to the things that we are attracted to in our world, a lot of times I find it amazing, like how many health books are out there, how many self-help books, how many cooking books, how many, and even if it's in the area of joy, like what brings you joy or not, we always have to be reintroduced information over and over and over again. It's just part of who we are. And so this is just my way of reintroducing that a path to healing, a path to protest, a path to celebration.
That's great.
Long, but
I mean, you have to learn and unlearn, and at different points in your life, you have to say, well, maybe I did yoga for 10 years and I'm ready to move on to something else. This is going to be something that's going to heal me in a different way. So it's good that you look at this as also a healing mechanism and a way to get in touch with yourself. Alex, I have a question for you. So you talked about being a singer and these different types of songs. Is there like a top 5 list of the famous songs, or how does one get to learn the songs? And can you name some songs for our listeners that are ones that are very famous or widely used?
Yeah, I mean, there are what I tend to call the top 10 Bomba songs, which are the ones that most folks are familiar with. I made it a point to learn as many songs as possible from as many elders as possible. So I pretty quickly built up a pretty strong library of songs that I learned, easily going into the hundreds, so it's, there's so many different styles of bomba, right, and different ways of singing it. The truth is that just like any music, right, it changes. The top 10 changes, and as I started studying it, I could say, hey, these were the songs that were popular at the turn of the century. And these were the songs that were popular from the 20s to about the 1940s. And then from the 1940s to the 1960s, these were the songs. So now what we have is that Bomba has not been recorded like other genres, right? Where there's like a lot of recordings of this genre and that. And there's actually not a big body of recordings of Bomba, especially before the 1970s, the late 1970s. What you find are field recordings of maybe an anthropologist who was interested in learning about something that was going on. They would go to Puerto Rico and they would record something. The oldest known recordings are the Mason recordings from 1914 by an anthropologist from the United States named John Alden Mason, who went to Puerto Rico looking for a living Native American tradition. And after 3 years of going around the island, he threw his hands up and said, there is no living indigenous tradition that I can find. I can find traces of it. I can find it within the language, within the food, but there's not a living culture. But what I do find is a very strong African presence throughout the whole island. And so what he went and he ended up doing, in order not to lose all that he had invested in a trip, he started recording on wax cylinders bomba songs in the town of Loíza. And he even got to interview some of the individuals who he was learning these songs from. And these songs were lost up until recently. And so we have now these songs, we're able to go back, we see the languages that these songs were being sung, we see that which songs were popular back then. And you can do this throughout the eras, right? So because there's this lack of a big library, right, of bomba recordings, when bomba started being recorded more regularly, which was in the beginning of the 1990s, in the late 80s, early 90s, though what's on those recordings have become the top 10, right? So those recordings became the top 10. Were on those CDs, like El Roble Mayor by the familia, like Rafael Cepeda and la Familia Cepeda, Para Cumbes Tambo, William Cepeda's Afro Boricua, And then so those are the songs that became very popular up until about 2010. Then you started seeing a really interesting thing happen. People, instead of just memorizing old songs, they started writing new songs,
Mm.
right? Which happened, but was not something that was common. It was you only knew but a handful of folks that really sat down and wrote their own bombas. Folks like Victor Vélez in Puerto Rico, and he in his time here in New York, Mickey Sierra, who passed away, myself. There was a handful of us that were writing songs based on the old ways of understanding them. But then around 2010, the newer generation that were getting into, the younger ones, they just started writing their own bombas. They were like, all right, we may not know how to write particularly a cuembe or a sika or a yuba, but we're going to write a song that fits to the rhythm anyway, and we're going to sing it. And so these songs started taking popularity, and then so it's definitely been changing. So a few of the songs that have been popular that everyone knows is like a song like Campo, which comes from Mayagüez. And it was, as far as we know, it was written by Mama Tonton in at the turn of like the 1800s into the early 1900s. And it was originally a yuba. Campo, yo vivo triste, cada día trabajo más. Ay Dios, ¿qué será de mí? Para seguir sufriendo, prefiero morir. And so the original version of that song says, Campo yo vivo triste, country, my countryside. I live sad, cada día trabajo más y más. Every day I work more and more. Ay Dios, ¿qué será de mí? Oh God, what will be of me? Para seguir sufriendo, prefiero morir. There are other variants that say, para seguir sufriendo, más vale morir. So we're saying, I'd rather die than continue suffering this way. And so that song over the years has changed as it traveled through the island. And a popular version of it was recorded by Los Pleneros de la 21, which I have been honored to be a part of and a family member of that, that prestigious group for many years. And it was recorded in the early 80s or in the mid 80s by Los Pleneros de la 21, where they recorded it now as a Sika rhythm. And they sing it now. Campo, yo vivo triste, cada día sufriendo más. Ay Dios, ¿qué será de mí? Si no bailo esta bomba, me voy a morir. So it's Campo, I live sad. Every day, I'm more and more sad, right? Oh God, what will be of me? If I don't dance this bomba, I'm going to die. So it changed a little bit from its origins, but it kind of kept that same feeling, right? That same energy behind it. And this happens with most of the Bomba songs. They go transforming over time to kind of fit the era that they're in.
Wow, it sounds like you've actually become quite the ethnomusicologist as well, and you're living the history. And kids must have a hard choice, reggaeton or bomba. I don't know. But so this question is for Isha. Perhaps you can answer this. You know, to get into this and really feel authentic about doing Bomba, I mean, do you need to be certified? Do you have to go to Puerto Rico and like the elders bless you? Like, how does one feel like, okay, I'm really doing it now?
So that's a great question, and I would say that it's not like a certification, but I think there is an approach with a lot of respect, understanding that it takes a long process. There's a lot that has to be learned. I would definitely say the elders play a significant role in this tradition. And, the ones that we have right now available, we should really be reaching out to them and learning from them. I mean, Alex has been practicing longer than me. I've been in this already 17 years, and I'm still learning and I'm still growing. So this is like a never-ending journey. And we have to understand that it takes time. It's process, it's respect, it's an ancestral tradition, and there's so much information out there compared to maybe previous generations or the last decade. I think in the last 20 years, the number of documents in terms of like written documents, like graduate school thesis, articles. And now lately what's been happening with the internet, basically having videos all over. it's not just that. We really have to talk to our elders, and we really have to talk to people that have lived it and experienced it. And, it takes sometimes a lot of courage to stand up and teach it. But when I did this, I didn't take it lightly. I took it with a lot of responsibility, understanding that if I'm going to do this, I have to do it the best way that I can. And I'm going to find the information from the broader spectrum of the Bomba community so that I can teach that over here. So yeah, that's kind of my experience.
Yeah, it sounds like there needs to be quite a bit more historic preservation work with this art form and historical documentation because it could so easily be lost. And there's, a generation of people who are going to age out of it and pass on. And then there's you all who are practicing now. And then what do you tell kids? Like, how does one bring young people into this understanding? How do we make it interesting and cool for them? Any thoughts on that from the group?
I can share very quickly that in that experience of teaching, I'm not trained as an educator, but I have learned and realizing when I started teaching kids that there were little amount of resources. Earlier this year, I released a children's book related to Bomba. It's titled Sophia and Her Bomba Drum. And that was mainly in that idea of trying to attract more kids to the tradition, not only locally, but broader as well, because we do need to preserve this tradition.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, I guess as we sort of get closer to the end of this panel, what are some things that how can we find more about the work that you're doing from each of you? And what do you hope to go forward with moving into this next phase? Amber, where can we find more about the work that you're doing and also,
So my website is Amber Robles-Gordon. In fact, everything in relationship to me. So on Instagram or Facebook, it's all Amber Robles-Gordon. And I for some reason I knew that question was going to come up, and I've been thinking about that in terms of I think that's why I'm posing it as a theoretical practice, my investigation, because I'm pretty sure that when I saw it, and even as an ongoing, that I decided that this is something that I want to do throughout the rest of my life. So I look at this as just the beginning of continuing forward, but the other thing is that I, like, for example, I've danced in various forms, but like Alex mentioned Bomba. So I didn't find out about Bomba until later, because that's the name of what it's called in St. Thomas.
Mhm.
And so there is a part of my, I don't know whether it's the journalist artist head or the investigator artist head, but that's one of the things I want to investigate, further. So I see this as the beginning of me continuing to investigate my own heritage, the connections between celebration, dance, and protest, and community, and then the other links in relationship to how we as people of color maintain our strength, our liberty, our grace, our community through dance and through joy. There's a part of me that wants to follow that thread wherever it leads me.
Mm-hmm.
So, and of course, I'll continue to do art. I can't not continue to do art. Art feeds my soul. It's one of the main ways, but absolutely dancing and building community does as well.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I mean, this is going to be an amazing show this weekend. We look forward to seeing you in action, you and your team, your group in action.
It's not my group. It's her group. It's Isha's group.
Isha's group. Okay.
I'm just a part of it.
So Isha will tie it all
Yes.
up. Alex, where can we find you and your work, and what are you hoping to do next with this?
So we have my Alma Moyo has two recordings that were released, one in 2010 or 2012, I can't recall right now, was our first one. And the second one was released about 2 years ago, called Resucitan. We give classes, we're always performing. I've been teaching kids in the New York City public school system for teaching them bomba, going on 20 something years now.
Okay.
And I work, I made it a choice to work primarily with children, youth of color, right, with our Black and brown children, because bomba is Black music, right, first and foremost. And so we have to make sure as practitioners, and especially so those of us who are not Black appearing, right? Because we know that in Puerto Rico, we are all mixed, right? So we have that mix of African, indigenous, and the big show that they teach everyone. But the truth is that our African presence is very strong, and it's in over 30% of the Spanish that we speak is of some sort of African origin, whether it's Central African, Kikongo, or maybe somewhere else, but primarily from Central Africa of Congo. And then the food that we eat and all this. So this is what I use to connect the kids that I teach who are from different backgrounds, being here in New York, being maybe African American, or maybe Black from another part of the Caribbean, or maybe straight from Africa. And so, and also the other children from other Latin American, countries, and even other students that are here from other countries. And so the point is that we can all find ourselves through this, because the source of it, right, is, the word bomba itself means to cool off in Kikongo. It's also how you say a big secret, but the way it's used in bomba was to cool off originally. And we know that because there is no greater tragedy or experience of, horrific experience like the transatlantic slave trade that went on. And this was the way they cooled off. And I got to sit with an elder from the Congo, and I brought him over. His name was Dr. Kimbwandende Kiabunseki Fukia, Dr. Fukia, one of the greatest authors. And I highly recommend his work. And so I brought him over to one of our rehearsals, and he was in amazement. And so he started saying, well, you guys have this word. It says Kwembe. We know we use this, and that's a dance for us, and we call it like this, and it means that. And Bambula, it means to remember who you are, to connect to the collective unconsciousness or the collective memory of your ancestors, and to reconnect. And even though you may not have lived it, you now experience it as if you did, because you connect to this greater web of ancestral knowledge. And so you can experience it without actually having to have been part of it, but mainly because it's in your blood already, right? So this is the music of African folks and the descendants of African people in Puerto Rico. And so that is how I go about teaching it to my students and to the younger generation, so that as they grow with it, they understand this is mine too. I may not have been born in Puerto Rico, I may not even be of Puerto Rican descent, but I'm a Black person, and that gives me, a part of this as well. This is a part of my heritage. This is a part of who I am. And so I make more connections than I do divisions, because really it's just a boat stop, right?
Yeah, it is a boat stop.
And Bambula, which was the oldest of all of the Puerto Rican rhythms, right, is also the oldest of all of the African American rhythms in the Americas, right? All the African rhythms in the Americas. Bambula was played in New York State, up in Albany, for the beginning of the Pinkster celebrations, when there was still slavery happening in New York State, right? And when they interviewed this old man who was playing a barrel drum in the 1600s in New York State, near Albany, his name was Jackie Quackenboss. It's written documentation. They interviewed him. What was he telling them? He was playing bomba and bambulas. And he was playing on a barrel drum. And this is upstate New York of the 1600s on the Dutch plantation. So this music was and found throughout the Americas in different ways. It developed differently, changed, but it's still there. Bambula, St. Thomas and St. Croix, and you find bambula throughout the Caribbean. Cuba, Dominican Republic, it's still played. Puerto Rico, it's still played. It's all over, right? The rhythms like Jujuba, you find it in Haiti and Puerto Rico and Cuba. So there's more connections to be made. So long time ago, I kind of threw out the nationalistic view of bomba as being this Puerto Rican thing.
Yeah.
And it's not. It's much greater than that. It was developed in Puerto Rico. We gave it our own flavor, but this is an African thing. This is a Black thing in the Americas. And in fact, one of the older rhythms of bomba that's no longer played, one of the older rhythms was known as candomblé, which is also the name of the rhythm of one of the main belief systems of Brazil, the candomblé practice, right?
Absolutely.
But what is candomblé is a Congo word, and it comes from the word candombe, and candombe means it's a Black thing. Right? Literally, that's how it's translated. So this rhythm was known as it's a Black thing, right?
Fascinating. This is
So
fascinating.
this is our tradition, right? And so I got into Bomba to learn more about my African ancestry on my mother's side. My mother being a Black Puerto Rican woman. Why didn't I come out, like my mama? Where did all my pigmentation go? My melanin. And so it was more to find out about me, about my roots, about my ancestry. And that's how I make it with the children that I teach. I make it personal to them. This is your journey now. You find out your history. Your story is just as beautiful and even more important. So we tell our stories through this. And that's what Alma Moyo has been. It's been a vehicle for us to tell our story, right?
Okay.
The African story in the Americas, particularly the one in Puerto Rico.
Yeah. Thank you. That's wow. This is going to require a second, version to get more of this great history out. I think we have a few minutes left, and I want to kind of close with Isha, with the same question and your thoughts about where you'd like to take this.
So you can find more information about the projects that I do with Bomba at Semilla Cultural on social media or our website, semillacultural.org. And in terms of what's next, this whole journey of writing a children's book has been a fascinating journey. I've learned so much. And I'm actually thinking about doing a series of books related to Bomba for children. So I'm already thinking about the next ones. I have a list of a few of those. So we'll see how fast I can work on them. And then also, continuing with the educational project, we're looking into expanding the lessons not only from DC, but also moving them to my area of Fredericksburg, Virginia, and, other locations around the state. So we'll see, this. As long as I can do it and it's possible, I'll be available and I'll keep stretching and preserving and make sure that this ancestral tradition keeps being shared and is preserved and we make sure that it is sustainable as a cultural practice.
Wow. Well, I want to thank everybody today for sharing their learning and their lessons and their ambitions for Bomba and certainly educating me and the audience to what it is and what its potential and history is. So thank you, Alex, Isha, and Amber, and thanks to Cultural DC. And please stay tuned for more programming and the performance that's coming on the culturaldc.org website. I'm Adrian Loving, your host. Thank you.
Awesome job, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you all.
I am so sorry.
Don't worry about it. These
Hey,
things
Isha,
happen.
we made it work. I hope
Thank you guys
Absolutely.
again for everything. I got to split. I got to run to a rehearsal now in Brooklyn. So thank
We'll have
you.
a
Gracias,
follow-up.
guys.
We'll have a follow-up soon.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.